Revealed, how I faced a Mafia boss at 17, the unexpected debt that changed my life forever. Jamie stood under the flickering streetlight, the shadows of his neighborhood looming like dark thoughts in his mind. He had always dreamed of college, of escaping to a place where his brilliance could shine unencumbered. But dreams felt like distant stars, out of reach, fading with each passing day. His mother worked 2 jobs, her weary eyes betraying the dreams she once held. He admired her dedication, but the weight of their struggle pressed hard on his chest. It was a cold evening when the air shifted, carrying a tension that made his skin crawl. An unexpected knock broke the silence of their cramped apartment. The visitor, an old family friend, Tony, was a specter from the past, someone Jamie remembered from his childhood, his presence now wrapped in an ominous aura. The moment their eyes met, Jamie felt a chill, something was off. "We need to talk," Tony said, his voice low. And then it hit him, a bombshell that shattered the fragile normalcy of his life. "Your mom's promise, Jamie," Tony continued, "it's time for you to pay." The word debt hung in the air like an unwelcome fog. It wasn't about money, it was a convoluted obligation woven deep into their family history. Jamie's heart raced as the implications consumed him. Panic set in. How could he possibly manage this? He was just a kid, still figuring out who he was. He stared at Tony, fighting against the churn of loyalty and fear battling within him. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue." As Tony spoke of contracts and shadows, Jamie's mind reeled. He could feel the walls closing in. Every sideways glance from the old man was a reminder of his mother's sacrifices and the dark underbelly of their town. He thought of his friends and their weekend hangouts, now underlined with tension, the laughter replaced with whispers of uncertainty. Could he negotiate a way out without risking everything his mother had worked for? The stakes rose with each word, a standoff in his mind, loyalty to family clashing violently with the temptation to step away from the precipice of this dark world. Yet with each heartbeat, doubt seeped in like poison. In that moment, Jamie understood what it meant to feel trapped, the noose of obligation tightening around his throat. What would it cost him to protect his family? His integrity? His future? His hands trembled at the thought as the shadows of the decision loomed large. Jamie realized he was on a precipice, and one misstep could send him spiraling into a darkness he could not comprehend. The confrontation ahead felt inevitable, and as he straightened his spine, determination flared within him, but it was fragile, flickering in the face of the man waiting outside. Was he strong enough to navigate this dangerous terrain and emerge whole, or would he be consumed by the very forces he sought to escape? The fight for his family's name and his own salvation had only just begun. Jamie stepped back from the door, heart racing. The words Tony had spoken echoed in his mind like a sinister mantra, urging him to act, yet leaving him paralyzed by fear. The notion of family loyalty felt suffocating now, an anchor threatening to drown him amid churning seas of uncertainty. He paused, taking a deep breath. This was the moment when everything he thought he knew about himself would be tested. His mind flooded with images of his mother's tired smile, her tireless work ethic guiding him toward a brighter future, one that now felt eclipsed by shadows of a past he didn't fully understand. How had they arrived at this crossroads? The obligation Tony mentioned would not only shape his destiny but also reveal the depths of his character. Without overthinking, Jamie paced the cramped space of their apartment. He needed a plan. It wasn't enough to react impulsively, he had to strategize. Could he confront Tony directly, demand clarity? Maybe even negotiate terms? Each thought mingled with desperation, spurring him to action. But deep-seated doubt crept in. He recalled the stories whispered in a neighborhood, how Tony had tangled in webs of deceit and danger. Could he solidify his stance against someone ingrained in those shadows? The weight of expectation rested heavily on his shoulders. Leaning against the peeling wall, Jamie fought against the urge to sink into despair. With a newfound resolve, he pulled out his phone and sent a message to his best friend, Marcus. They had been inseparable since childhood, sharing dreams of college and escaping their reality together. A few exchanges later, Jamie felt a flicker of hope. Marcus had always been the grounded one, capable of assessing perilous situations with clarity. His response was quick and straightforward: "Meet me." An hour later, Jamie found himself at the park where they spent countless evenings. The familiar swing set seemed ominous now, a monument to their lost innocence. Marcus arrived, his face creased with concern. "What happened?" Marcus asked, his voice low, cutting through the tense air. Jamie's throat tightened as he recounted Tony's visit and the implications of the debt. With each word, the burden felt less solitary, his friend's eyes widened, a mirror for his growing anxiety. "I can't let this destroy my future, Marcus. I have to find a way out." "You need to figure out what they want," Marcus said cautiously, tapping his knee. "But you can't do it alone. You need a plan, maybe even allies." The idea of gathering allies felt strange. He had always seen himself as a lone figure, braving the inevitable hardship like his mother before him. Yet here, in this moment, he felt the weight of his isolation break. Relying on others was foreign, but in the face of danger, it might be the only way to break free. "What if," Jamie began, uncertainty seeping into his voice. "What if I turned the tables? What if I stood up to them instead of hiding?" The flicker of determination grew brighter, a beacon piercing the thick fog of fear. But soon after, doubt circled back, tightening its vice-like grip, threatening to suffocate the nascent resolve. Would he find the strength needed to confront Tony? As twilight settled over the park, Jamie leaned into the idea. He would meet Tony again, demand respect grounded in power wrapped in determination. But as the stars began to dot the night sky, one question lingered: what if facing Tony intermingled with unearthing truths that should have remained buried? The moment of reckoning loomed, and Jamie could either forge his own path of defiance or submit to an unforgiving fate. The next morning painted a sharp contrast to the oppressive night before. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating Jamie's resolve as he faced himself in the mirror. Each morning routine action felt amplified: brushing his teeth, fixing his hair, like preparations for a stage he never wanted to claim. He kept muttering the words he needed to say: "This ends today." Before breakfast, Jamie strategically sorted through his cluttered room, laying out papers from previous assignments and planning the case he would bring against Tony. He pen-labeled each document, highlighting key points about the debts swirling around his family documents that had been mere shadows before, now transformed into resources he could wield. Over the breakfast table, he intuitively observed his mother's silence as she sipped her coffee, her tired eyes flickering between worry and fatigue. "Mom, what would you do if someone threatened everything we worked for?" he asked, testing the waters. She looked up, one eyebrow arching in surprise. "You mean, like Tony?" That name hung between them, heavy with unspoken fear, yet Jamie saw a flicker of acknowledgement. She understood. "What did he do to you, really?" Jamie pressed. He felt the knot of anger tightening in his core. "What if we pushed back instead of lying down?" His mother sighed, a sound filled with years of defeat. "You're too young to get involved. This is not your battle." Yet even as she spoke, Jamie saw her hesitations and internal conflict that echoed his own. That was the moment clarity struck. Her words lit a fire beneath his doubts. Jamie understood he could mold this situation. He was not merely a victim in this narrative. He was a contender. The school day consisted of drift and distraction as his thoughts spun around the impending confrontation with Tony. During lunch, Jamie met Marcus, who had assumed a conspiratorial demeanor, summoning Jamie's focus. "Okay, what's the plan?" Marcus asked, tapping a frayed notebook against the table. The weight of the world seemed to rest on Jamie's shoulders as he inspired his friend to look beyond their typical routines. "I want to go in prepared, not just emotionally but factually," Jamie explained. "I want to map out a potential scenario of negotiation and even conflict. Maybe even record our conversation. It's time I stop living in fear." Marcus nodded, enthusiasm igniting in his chest. "Let us do this. But first, we'll get you some backup people who can come if things go sideways." Jamie sensed a thick cloud of solidarity wrap around them. They began sketching out strategies, roles, even potential exit routes. The gravity of what lay ahead grew heavier, invigorating rather than intimidating. Each detail they plotted fortified Jamie's growing self-understanding. He wasn't just a passive actor. He could take charge, influence outcomes, and carve paths through otherwise insurmountable obstacles. As they spoke, a revelation struck Jamie like light striking the ocean's surface, the authority situated in knowledge mixing wit with aggression. He realized he possessed a deep-rooted resolve that transcended his fears. He could shield himself with insight and strategy. With their meeting approaching, Jamie walked home, the twilight wrapping around him, imbued with newfound energy. He could see the door to the confrontation opening, gleaming in a palette of anticipation and fear. Jamie found himself wondering about Tony's vulnerabilities, the cracks in his dark facade. Did the man understand how serrated his world had become? Would their meeting produce an unexpected connection, or would it unleash the full chaos his worst fears conspired against? As he approached their apartment, the looming confrontation seemed like an inevitable storm, a reckoning with not just Tony but with everything he had stifled within himself. He could no longer hide in the shadows. With his heart pounding intensely, Jamie steeled himself. Tomorrow would demand everything he had learned, everything he was prepared to become. The next few hours would define his future in ways he hadn't even begun to comprehend. Would he come to claim his agency, or would he find himself ensnared in a web from which he could never escape? The morning light gleamed through the curtains, casting elongated shadows that danced across Jamie's bedroom floor. This time, there was no lingering dread to grind against his resolve. Instead, each detail, the whir of the fan, the chirp of distant birds, served as a reminder of the electric energy surging through him. Jamie dressed quickly, donning his most confident attire, an ensemble he hoped would convey strength, resolve, and a hint of defiance. His mother was already at the kitchen table when he walked in, her eyes flickering to him briefly before returning to her coffee. Jamie felt the weight of their shared circumstances pressing down on them both. He had spent too many mornings locked in silence with her, thoughts unspoken, lives unclaimed. Today was different. Today, he was the architect of change. "Mom, I'll be home a bit later today," he said, his voice steady, meeting her gaze without flinching. He could see her brow furrow for the briefest moment, apprehension shadowing her features. "I need to deal with some things about Tony." The words tasted bitter, yet liberating. "Jamie, please just be careful. You don't know what he is capable of," she cautioned, her voice threaded with concern. Yet beneath her worry, he detected a flicker of pride. It was subtle, but it was there. With breakfast behind him, he slipped into his backpack the meticulously organized documents he had prepared. He studied the facts and figures, his mind racing with the knowledge they contained. Each line represented pieces of his family's turbulent story, ready to be leveraged against the greater narrative Tony had crafted. Today, Jamie would turn from a passive observer into an active participant, reclaiming some control over the chaos that had clouded his life. At school, Jamie found refuge in the library, poring over notes and theoretical dialogues about negotiation tactics. He scribbled points on a notepad, drawing connections he hadn't considered before. The world of litigation and argumentation began to click into place, revealing an unexpected affinity for navigating conflict. Marcus appeared behind him unexpectedly, excitement dancing in his eyes. "We're ready for this, right?" Marcus asked, eyes scanning Jamie's notes. "We're more than ready. We're armed," Jamie replied, a smile teasing the corners of his mouth. The camaraderie bolstered his courage. Together, they had charted every contingency, envisioned every outcome. The camaraderie felt invigorating, a partnership forged in the fire of shared determination. As the bell rang, signaling the end of the day, Jamie's pulse quickened. Each footstep toward Tony's neighborhood seemed to resonate with purpose. He was no longer just a victim of circumstance, he was taking the reins of his fate. Yet, doubt clawed at the corners of his mind just as fiercely as was his determination. Had he overlooked anything vital in their plans? What if Tony proved to be more cunning than they anticipated? The moment he reached the appointed place, a weathered diner with peeling paint and flickering neon, an uneasy energy roost in his chest. He had envisioned this confrontation 1,000 times but felt the reality of it approach like an impending storm. He opened the door to the diner, the bell chiming softly above him. The tang of fried food and the low hum of conversation wrapped around him, providing an unexpected comfort. He saw Tony sitting at the far booth, his imposing figure almost drowning the worn vinyl seat beneath him. The confidence exuded by the older man was palpable, yet Jamie's heart thrummed with the intensity of the moment. As he approached, the chatter dulled to a murmur, tension rising with each step. Jamie wasn't just confronting Tony, he was confronting the fear that had shadowed him for far too long. Would this confrontation forge a new path for both him and his mother, or would it lock him within the confines of intimidation? He inhaled deeply, forcing his eyes to remain fixed on Tony, who seemed to regard him with an amused disdain. With every ounce of bravery he possessed, Jamie stepped into the space between them, aware that his next words could either empower him or send him spiraling back into his previous life of fear and uncertainty. "Let's talk," he asserted, the gravity of intention anchored in his voice. As Tony leaned forward, a sly smile prickled his lips. Jamie could almost feel the power shifting between them, and he realized this moment could be pivotal. Would he rise to the occasion and claim his agency, or would he back down, forever haunted by the choices he hadn't made? In that fleeting second, he understood that the outcome was not entirely in Tony's hands. Jamie's heart raced, and with it came the dawning realization that this was only the beginning. The stakes were set, the meeting would either shatter the illusion of power Tony had built or leave Jamie questioning everything he thought he knew about himself. The ground beneath him felt less stable, he stood, poised on the edge of a precipice that neither could predict the outcome of. What awaited was not merely a confrontation but a defining moment that would determine whether he would walk away emboldened or broken. With a rising sense of purpose battling his apprehensions, Jamie was ready to discover what lay ahead. What was the true cost of bravery, and would it prove more than he could afford? Tony's smirk widened as Jamie settled into the booth opposite him. The older man radiated a confidence that felt almost suffocating, like the stale air of the diner. Jamie could sense the weight of unspoken threats hanging between them, but rather than feeling small, he grasped the power of his vulnerability. This was his stage, and he was determined to play his role to the fullest. "Glad you could finally make it, kid," Tony drawled, his voice dripping with condescension. "What's on your mind?" "I want to talk about the money," Jamie replied, his voice steady, hiding the turmoil churning within him. "You know, the debt you've supposedly erased. I've got questions." "Questions? What kind of questions?" Tony leaned back, a flicker of curiosity sharpening his gaze. Jamie took a moment to collect his thoughts. He had prepared for this conversation in many forms, practicing in front of a mirror, running through scenarios with Marcus, but now that he was here, it was time to shed those rehearsed lines. "I want to know how you handle debts. Why yours isn't yours anymore. And what game you're playing with my family." Tony chuckled, the sound low and mocking. "You think you're in any position to ask me, Jamie? You don't know how deep this game goes." The intimidation was palpable, yet Jamie remembered his focus. "I do know. And I know I can expose you. I'm not afraid of you anymore." That declaration resonated in the air, the tension thickening like fog. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he registered that he had crossed a threshold. He was no longer simply speaking words, but claiming a stake in the narrative. For too long he allowed fear to dictate his mother's reality, but now he sought to redefine it. Tony's smile faded slightly, his demeanor shifting, but Jamie pressed on. You thrive on control, but the way I see it, you're the one who should be worried. We have the documentation, the proof. I can make it all public. Ah, the little papers, Tony retorted, waving a dismissive hand. You really think you can challenge me? I've survived worse than a bunch of scribbles and a determined kid. Jamie leaned forward. Not just scribbles, Tony. These are facts. You built your empire on deception and manipulation, and now it's crumbling. I'm here to expose that. For a fleeting moment, their eyes locked, Tony assessing him, Jamie facing the reality of his words. We have bigger problems than petty debts, Tony finally conceded, the chill in his voice rising. You're meddling in something that could end badly for you and your mother. You think this is a game? No. You've made it a game. A dangerous one, Jamie asserted, breathless with determination. But how about I change the rules? A taut silence enveloped them, Jamie's heart thundered against his ribs like a war drum, matching the turmoil in his mind. There was power flickering in this confrontation, but the stakes he had set could still ignite chaos. He started calculating potential consequences: his mother's safety, his own future. Was he ready to gamble with so much in play? Tony broke eye contact and leaned back again, analyzing the potential threat Jamie posed. You're treading dangerous ground. And you're not as invulnerable as you think, Jamie replied, emboldened as Tony's tension painted a truer picture of the older man's state. In that moment, Jamie wasn't just confronting a mobster, he was confronting his own limits, pushing through the haze of fear, discovering strength he never knew he possessed. It was transformative. Come back to me when you're ready to play, kid, Tony said, leaning back with an unsettling confidence, but the slight tremor in his voice hinted at the cracks forming in his armor. As Jamie stood to leave, he felt an exhilarating rush. Tony hadn't dismissed him, he had acknowledged him as a player in this dangerous game. Leaving the diner, the night air felt electric, the fear had morphed into a fresh resolve. Jamie realized he was awakening a part of himself that could no longer remain dormant. He headed to Marcus, anticipation buzzing like static in the air. What had started as a desperate confrontation could perhaps be the opening act of a much larger performance. With fresh determination invigorating him, Jamie pondered the next steps. If he could teach Tony a lesson, what else could he learn about himself? The stark reality loomed ahead, every decision now held weight, every move counted. In the world he faced, there was a new urgency, and the next decision could lead to unforeseen depths or heights of self-discovery. While Jamie felt emboldened, the uncertainty thrummed beneath his newfound courage, whispering the risks of playing with fire. As he departed the diner, a lingering thought occupied his mind: what retaliation might lie ahead from a wounded enemy? The stakes had escalated, Jamie would soon learn just how dangerous the game could truly become. The clattering of plates and the sharp chatter of customers faded as Jamie stepped outside, the chill of the evening air wrapping around him like a shroud. Each breath he took felt heavier yet invigorated by the confrontation. Stepping into the street, he felt the weight of his decisions loom over him. He fought to maintain his composure, moving quickly towards Marcus's apartment. The exchange with Tony had stirred more than resolve, it ignited a smoldering need for knowledge and strategy. Upon arrival, Jamie burst through the door, his heart racing as he found Marcus in the dimly lit living room, hunched over a stack of papers sprawled across the coffee table. The flickering light from a nearby lamp cast shadows that danced around the room, mirroring the turbulence inside Jamie's mind. Did you talk to him? Marcus looked up, his expression shifting from casual curiosity to immediate concern as he noted Jamie's flushed cheeks and wild eyes. Yeah, I did, Jamie replied, his voice brimming with urgency. And it went better than I expected. He took a moment, considering how to convey the import of the meeting without overstepping. We're not just dealing with debt anymore. It's about control. Marcus leaned back, processing Jamie's words. Control. What do you mean? Tony thinks he can manipulate everyone, but I see him for who he really is. I confronted him. I told him I knew how he operated, Jamie continued, his voice steadying. I can expose him, Marcus. I just need to know how to manage this. Marcus's eyebrows raised, impressed yet apprehensive. That's a bold move for someone like you. But you're stepping deeper into dangerous waters. Have you thought this through? Every decision leads us here, Jamie insisted, feeling the rush of adrenaline surge within him again. If I can push back, maybe he'll be vulnerable. Maybe I'll actually have the upper hand for once. Marcus studied Jamie carefully. And what about your mother? Even if you expose him, the risk of retaliation it's real, Jamie. You need a solid plan. As they delved into the strategy, Jamie realized the depth of his own resolve. This wasn't a simple battle over debt but a confrontation of identity. Each brush stroke in this ever-evolving picture was about who he was becoming. I can't keep running, he finally articulated, a fierce determination coursing through him. I've always been the kid who played it safe, but Tony has shown me what it means to seize control. I can learn from him, turn this against him. Learning doesn't mean mimicking his behavior, Marcus cautioned, his tone shifting to one of mentorship. Understand the game that's strength. But don't lose yourself in how he plays it. In the dialogue that ensued, Jamie felt moments of clarity interspersed with confusion. Every theory and plan they laid out exposed layers to his own psychological landscape. He discovered hidden competencies in himself, analytical thinking, the ability to remain calm under pressure, and an emerging sense of leadership. As the hours dragged on, plans morphed from cautious whispers into fiery strategies. Ideas rolled off their tongues like a volcanic eruption, each more daring than the last. Jamie recognized these moments were not merely tactical, they were transformative. He was no longer a victim of circumstance, he was poised for action. Finally, as fatigue seeped into their bones and the clock ticked towards dawn, Jamie felt an unsettling flicker of doubt arise. What if I step too far? What if I lose everything? Then you learn, Marcus replied, underscoring a fundamental truth. Gaining is risky, but nothing ventured, nothing gained. This game isn't truly about defeat. It's about discovery. With renewed vigor, Jamie nodded, the firm grip of determination tightening around his resolve. He wasn't just taking a stand, he was discovering the depth of his own potential, challenging himself to break free from the chains of his previous fears. But as he made plans and set into motion the next steps, he couldn't shake the notion that every move he made could ripple far beyond his control. The struggle for personal victory was just beginning. Before they separated for the night, Marcus turned to Jamie with a cautious seriousness. Just remember, Jamie, it's not just about exposure. It's about survival. Every choice matters. The real challenge comes when you have to face the consequences. With that ominous warning hanging in the air, Jamie stepped back into the darkness of the night, each heartbeat a reminder of the impending confrontation that lay ahead. The anticipation fresh in his mind, he wondered, how far would he have to go to protect those he loved without losing himself in the process? The answers waited just beyond the horizon, blurred but tantalizing. The following day, Jamie shuffled through his usual work routine, but each task felt distant, submerged in the undercurrent of his thoughts. The plates and silverware clattered around him, but the sound merely served as background noise to his lingering confrontation with Tony. He moved mechanically, his mind dissecting every word spoken the night before, every nuance that could be exploited. Jamie's world had shifted overnight from mundane responsibilities to a thrilling yet terrifying anticipation. At lunch, Jamie settled in a corner booth at the diner, sliding into the familiar red vinyl seat, but even the comfort had soured. He stared at his plate, lost in thought, until he noticed Marcus enter, scanning the room until he spotted Jamie. He gestured for him to join, and Jamie's stomach churned with anxiety. What if he retaliates? Marcus asked directly, sliding into the seat opposite him. Have you calculated the risks? Maybe it's time I stop worrying so much, Jamie responded, trying to mask his determination as confidence. I need to leverage what I have. I can't afford to wait anymore. Marcus leaned in, seriousness etched into his features. What do you think you have? My knowledge of how he operates, my ability to outsmart him. I need to act before he does, Jamie explained, the fire in his words illuminating a new reality. Maybe if I push the right buttons, I can manipulate this situation to my advantage. Let us explore that, Marcus said, a spark of interest igniting in his eyes. What exactly do you know about Tony's operations that can work in your favor? As they strategized, Jamie started to notice how he spoke with intense focus, shifting from fear to empowerment. Questions rolled off his tongue, fueled by newfound insight. Each response from Marcus only reaffirmed Jamie's ability to think critically, dissecting scenarios with a fervor he had never tapped into before. I've been to the warehouse down by the docks. I listened in on some conversations, Jamie revealed, feeling a thrill course through him. I can use what I heard to craft a narrative that makes Tony appear vulnerable. Marcus nodded, impressed. Good. That's your starting point. But you need more than just knowledge. You need allies and resources. Do you have anyone who can help? Who can I trust? Jamie questioned, his mind racing through Face's friends, co-workers, but none felt solid enough to handle the storm. Maybe Jake. He's been in the life longer than most of us. Then go to him. Convince him to back you, Marcus insisted. In this game, you're going to need all the allies you can muster. That day took on a new urgency. Jamie felt atoms within him shift, realigning toward purpose and strategy, craving action in ways he had never before. The diner wasn't just a pit stop, it was a pivotal moment in transformation, the space where doubt had begun to dissipate, replaced by a sense of agency. When the shift finally ended, Jamie found himself outside, hands stuffed deep into his pockets, the chill in the air sharpening his resolve. He thought about Jake, navigating unfamiliar waters to pull allies into his scheme. As he stepped toward Jake's favorite bar, uncertainty clawed at the edges of his confidence. What assurances did he have that Jake wouldn't betray him? Did he even have a choice but to trust someone? As he approached the bar, the stench of stale beer and desperation wafted into the night, stark against his modern ambitions. He pushed the door open, the jingle of bells above providing an oddly welcoming contrast to his frayed nerves. Jake was seated at the corner, his familiar silhouette framed against the dim light, surrounded by traces of laughter that felt as though they belonged to another world. Jamie hesitated, contemplating the gamble he was about to take. Could this be my one chance? He muttered under his breath, steeling his spine as he strode toward Jake, each step heavy with gravity. Hey, Jamie, Jake glanced up, his usual easy grin faltering as he caught sight of the seriousness etched across Jamie's face. Can we talk? It's important. The weight of Jamie's impending confrontation loomed like mountains forming within him. As he took a seat beside Jake, a grasping thought settled in his mind, the true battle was just beginning, and the stakes were set higher than ever. He wondered if he could pull off his next move without getting crushed beneath the weight of his ambition. As the question hung suspended in the air, Jamie's resolve grew stronger, preparing for whatever repercussions loomed on the horizon. How much of himself would he have to risk to turn the tables on Tony? The answer awaited him within the revelations to come, suffused with tension and daring risk. Sitting across from Jake, the bar's dim lighting cast shadows across Jamie's face, amplifying the seriousness of the moment. He swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the conversation before it even began. The air thickened with tension, mirroring Jamie's internal struggle. He had spent years underestimating himself, and now it felt as if every choice, every past hesitation, brought him to this exact moment. Listen, Jake, Jamie began, his voice steadier than he felt. I know our paths have crossed in some questionable circumstances. But I genuinely need your insight right now. Jake leaned back in his chair, caution flashing in his eyes. Insight? You mean trouble, right? The playful tone didn't exactly alleviate the pressure mounting in Jamie's chest. Yet, Clarity surged within him, the urgency to step forward, leave fear behind, and embrace his ground in a game that was turning dangerously competitive. I have information about Tony's operations. My plan is to outmaneuver him, and I need someone with experience to back me up. Jake's brows furrowed. And what makes you think you can outsmart Tony? He's not the kind of guy you play games with. There are real consequences. Jamie's heart raced as Jake's skepticism settled over him like a heavy fog. I know, but that's what makes this a gamble I have to take. I've listened in on deals, and I believe he has vulnerabilities I can exploit if I approach this carefully. Jake executed a thoughtful nod, but Jamie noticed the hesitation in his posture. It was a reminder that trust was fragile in their world, and gaining Jake's support didn't come without its own risks. Look, you're right, knowledge is power. The question is, how far are you willing to go, and what are you prepared to sacrifice? The idea of sacrifice twisted Jamie's gut. Could he expose himself this way? His response came out more assertively than intended. Everything. If we can bring Tony down a notch, it opens doors for us, maybe even a shot at something legitimate. Jake leaned forward, intrigued yet wary. And if it backfires? What then, Jamie? You just throw your life away for a scheme? The truth clung to Jamie like silver gloves dusted with flour. He could feel the potential for a new identity, one of agency, battling against shadows of doubt. I can't go back to being the same person, sitting idly by while others run the show. Each word transformed him as it left his lips, igniting in him a fierce determination, a realization that his small life, obscured by servitude and compliance, could lead to something greater. Jake studied him, weighing the sincerity behind Jamie's gaze. If we're doing this, it means we're in it together. If Tony finds out, believe me, it won't just be your head on the line, it'll be mine too. Are you in or not? Jamie asked, feeling both a flicker of hope and the weight of impending accountability. After a long silence, Jake let out a slow breath. All right. I'll help you. Just remember, it's not just a game. You start this, and you better be ready for the fallout. Outside, the night felt colder, yet a creeping warmth lit Jamie's core. For the first time, he felt like an architect of his fate rather than a mere inhabitant of someone else's design. But fear still lingered, thrumming beneath his skin. The confrontation with Tony would come one way or another, each revelation about his plan accompanied by the chilling realization of what lay ahead. As they left the bar, Jamie's mind spun with next steps. The delicate dance of strategy and deception was only just beginning. He understood he had unearthed a spark within himself capable of navigating this storm, but at what cost? Just when he thought they might have a solid plan, Jamie's phone buzzed with a message. The screen lit up, revealing a text from an unknown number. I know what you're planning. The exhilaration he felt moments ago soured, replaced with apprehension. The noise around him faded as Jamie grappled with his swirling emotions. Who was watching him, and how did they know? As he looked at Jake, the urgency of their situation tightened around him like a noose. The game had escalated, and now he would have to push forward before he lost everything he had just begun to fight for. Trouble was only beginning to reveal itself. The night air sliced through Jamie's thoughts, each gust a persistent reminder of the stakes involved. He and Jake moved toward the parking lot, but Jamie's mind raced in multiple directions, each one crammed with potential consequences, each scenario laden with risk. What had he invited into his life? As he nodded absently at Jake, who maintained a steady gait beside him, Jamie felt unsettled. Alarm bells rang in his mind, amplifying his urgency. You okay? Jake's voice cut through the fog of Jamie's racing thoughts. You seem a bit pale. I'm fine, Jamie replied, though even he could hear the tremor in his words. Confidence was supposed to be his new badge of honor, but doubt gnawed at him now, relentless in its pursuit. We need to think this through. Jake halted, turning to face him. Thinking is one thing, but you've got to decide if you're committed to this. No room for wishy-washiness. This is about power and survival. His words slammed into Jamie like a cold bucket of water. He had known that making this leap meant shedding parts of his old self, yet he hadn't fully accepted the implications. He needed to morph into someone who could take action, someone who could execute a plan without letting emotions creep into his decisions like a thief in the night. "What are you thinking?" Jake probed, eyes narrowing, probing for more than just a surface answer. "I just wonder if I'm in over my head," Jamie admitted, his honesty raw, but it generated a flicker of clarity within him. The vulnerability he exposed was a reflection on his growth, a willingness to confront his limitations instead of hiding behind bravado. "Better to recognize the risk now than later, when it's too late," Jake said, his tone shifting to one of somber camaraderie. "Listen, being cautious doesn't mean you're weak. It's the smart players who stay alive in this game. Don't forget that." Jamie inhaled deeply, weighing Jake's words. Each inhale tasted of metal, a stark reminder of the stakes he was up against. "You're right," he said, a new resolve igniting in his gut. "But I need to arm myself with more than just courage. I have to be strategic." "Good. That's the spirit," Jake encouraged. "We have to map this out cleanly, how we're going to approach Tony, where to push, and where to hold back. You're not just facing him, you're facing everyone he is surrounded by. There's no latitude for mistakes." The tension in Jamie's chest tightened, but he dared to weave a strategy in his mind, images of confrontations morphing into plans of action. He thought about the vulnerabilities he had identified, mentally compiling them into an array of points he could leverage. The game of chess in his mind melded into a clear picture. He could be a player in this. "Let's meet after hours at the diner tomorrow," Jamie proposed. "I'll gather what I can on Tony's operations and make a dossier of his weaknesses." "Good idea," Jake replied. "And don't underestimate the importance of timing. Make sure you let them believe you're still the uninformed waiter, and they'll underestimate you. That's your biggest advantage. Keep that card close." Jamie's pulse quickened at the thought. This was more than just a chance for revenge, it was a gateway to proving himself. The duality of their plan settled. A dance of deception was necessary. It thrilled him, though the underlying concern of exposure loomed large. Just as they reached the car, his phone buzzed again. He hesitated before checking it, dread pooling in his stomach. This time it was a short message: "Time is running out." Heart pounding, Jamie glanced at Jake, who was watching him carefully. "What did it say?" "It's another unknown number," Jamie muttered, the gravity of the situation becoming painfully clear. "It feels like they're closing in." "Then we move," Jake asserted. "Faster than we planned. We take action before they can track our moves." "Okay," Jamie nodded, adrenaline igniting a deep, resolute fire within him. This was far more than a personal vendetta now, this was survival. They took off, down the unpredictable road ahead. As Jamie clenched the steering wheel, question after question raced through his mind. Was he doing the right thing? Was the sacrifice truly necessary? Was there any way to regain control? The answers eluded him, but the burden of this perilous path pushed him into uncharted territories. The confrontation with Tony was no longer a hypothetical, it was imminent. The clock was ticking, and he could almost feel the shadows of danger lurking around every corner. The moment to prove himself had arrived, and he could not back down. What kind of person was he going to become in this storm? And as he accelerated into the night, Jamie heard the echo of the unknown whispering to him, promising revelations that would keep him on the razor's edge. The days that followed were a whirlwind for Jamie, each moment an unpredictable leap into a dimension he had only imagined before. With Jake's backing, he meticulously prepared for the inevitable confrontation. He had curated documents outlining the vulnerabilities that Tony carried like a sinking anchor in the deep waters of crime. Each aspect outlined was a stepping stone into a new version of himself, a version that embraced confrontation rather than evasion. Meeting at the diner after hours had become a ritual of strategizing. Over steaming cups of coffee and crowded plates of fries, Jamie and Jake mapped out each potential turn, their conversations riddled with anticipation. The air was alive with urgency, thoughts like sparks igniting a dire need for action, illuminating the shadows that had once paralyzed him. Jamie felt an awakening within. He was no longer the docile waiter simply biding time until he could escape. The yearning to rise above the shackles of fear compelled him to vigorously engage with his own potential. Each tactical discussion and adaptation birthed a solid foundation upon which he could build his newfound identity. On what could be his climactic day, Jamie dressed with purpose, trading in tattered jeans for sharp slacks. He donned a fitted shirt that he had reserved for rare occasions, seeing this moment as one deserving of a calculated display. It wasn't merely an outward transformation, the confidence with which he faced himself in the mirror radiated a concrete evolution within. His mother sensed the change. "You seem different," she remarked, her eyes searching his face, as if trying to reconcile the boy she had raised with this emerging force of determination. "What's going on, Jamie?" "I'm just taking charge, Mom." Finally standing up for what's right, he answered, infusing finality into his tone. This wasn't merely about facing Tony anymore, it was about reclaiming his narrative. The diner, once a symbol of comfort in the midst of uncertainty, morphed into a battleground. The flickering neon shone a stark reminder of how far he'd traveled. This was no longer a favored spot for meals, it was the arena for defining actions. Seated at the same booth across from Jake, the tension hummed in the air, electric and palpable. "You ready for this?" Jake asked, doubt mingling with assurance in his voice. "I am," Jamie responded, their eyes locking in mutual recognition of the gravity before them. "Whatever happens, I'm prepared." With every ounce of adrenaline coursing through his veins, Jamie presented the dossier filled with insights gathered over weeks of covert observation, detailed accounts of Tony's dealings, his contacts, and the evidence that could implicate him in crimes spanning years. He reclaimed the power that had been dictated to him for too long. Later that evening, as Jamie walked towards the appointed meeting spot with Tony again, the diner now transformed in his mind, he felt the echoes of his past confront him, the whispers of inadequacy, the shadows of doubt. He steadied himself, reminding himself that he was more than that image. Today marked the reckoning. Tony sat at their customary booth, his features etched with intrigue as Jamie approached. "Heard you've been making waves, Jamie," he sneered. But behind that facade lay something far more nervous, the acknowledgement that Jamie now bore teeth of his own. "No more hiding, Tony," Jamie began, his voice firm, a growing confidence surging through him. "No more manipulation or threats. It's time for clear terms." The older man leaned back, amusement flickering behind his eyes. "And you think you have the upper hand?" "I know I do," Jamie asserted, laying the dossier on the table, the sound crisp and heavy like a judgment awaiting execution. "This is proof of your vulnerabilities. The way I see it, we can either negotiate a truce, or I can make this information public." Tony's expression shifted, the amusement flickering as realization sunk in. Jamie could almost see the machinery behind Tony's brain whirring, parsing the implications of what he faced. A battle of wills unfolded, not just Tony's threatening past against Jamie's forged resolve, but a dialogue of transformation. "Do you think you can just waltz in and call the shots?" Tony taunted, though the trembling edges of his arrogance betrayed the mounting pressure. "I just did," Jamie replied, a newfound assertiveness and clarity anchoring him. "I'm making the decision now. You either walk away from my family or face unprecedented repercussions." Silence loomed, thick with tension, but Jamie could see subtle cracks forming in Tony's steely demeanor. This moment was the culmination of every realization, every decision that had led Jamie to reclaim his agency under the shadows of Tony's oppressive presence. Suddenly, the exhilaration of triumph ripped through him. Each step, each stage of fear he had navigated had propelled him into the light of this newfound strength. "Fine," Tony surrendered, a begrudging flicker of respect threading through his voice. "What are you proposing?" With a firm resolve, Jamie outlined his terms, not only securing his family's safety but also vowing to be a force for change rather than fear. As the negotiation unfolded, Jamie realized he had transformed not just the dialogue, but also himself. The pressures that used to cloud his judgment melted away, revealing a clear vision. Later, as Jamie left the diner, he walked with a stride imbued with purpose, fully aware that he was no longer merely striving to escape a past that haunted him. He had emerged, a victor in his own right. Home felt different, not a confinement but a sanctuary of empowerment where dreams lay waiting for him to cultivate. He had reclaimed his path, solidified his standing, and through each confrontation had displayed the courage he had long thought would evade him. Jamie was not just a survivor, he was a dynamic force ready to embrace the potential of what lay ahead. With the sense of newfound clarity illuminating his future, he had proven to himself that he could conquer the confines of fear, step into resilience, and step beyond shadows into a life he was destined to claim. And that was just the beginning. He would mold his story not through threats but through courage. Now is the time for you to act. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support for tales of personal overcoming. Comment your thoughts and theories about this thrilling conclusion. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who are desperate for inspiration. Don't wait even one more second to be part of the journey.